Welcome to the Mormon Medium Podcast, where we'll talk about spirituality, the paranormal, religion, and my journey in becoming a Mormon medium. I'm Nanette Ride. Thanks for listening. Now let's go have some fun.
Don't be afraid. Close your eyes. There's a moon overhead, but the sun will rise. Blood on our lips, such a poisonous bite. The sound of our hearts go bump, bump, bump in the night.
Hello and welcome to the Mormon Medium Podcast. I'm Brad and I'm here with Nan, and today we have an amazing guest who we're going to be talking to about sound baths and sound therapy and different modalities of healing.
Yeah, we'd like to welcome Brenda Griffith. She's a friend of ours, but she's also so talented. She is a nurse, and I'm going to let you also tell more about you. You have so many things that you do and so much experience. So, Brenda, tell us about you.
Okay, well, let's see. I'm an old soul.
Yes.
For sure. Been in the medical profession probably close to 40 years. Was a nurse for 30. Been in that allopathic pathway of healing for a long time. And after a long while and looking at the healthcare field, I decided I wanted to go on and get a master's degree. But I didn't want to get it in nursing. I wanted to explore other things. And so I got my master's degree in complementary and alternative medicine. And it was an eye-opening experience for me. Gave me another bag of tricks, or tools, I should say, to add to the repertoire I already had with allopathic medicine.
Now, can you explain the difference between allopathic medicine and alternative medicine?
Yeah,
For a
please.
lot of people don't know the difference between the two.
Well, in a nutshell, allopathic medicine is very good with acute and with trauma. That's really what it was. That's our surgeries. Those are those things that the trauma, the accidents that we have. Where plant medicine or alternative medicine is better for the long-term or chronic illnesses. The difference mainly is the allopathic medicine is more reliant on pharmaceutical, and the alternative medicine, although can use pharmaceutical, is more reliant on natural or plant medicine. So that would be, I think, the biggest difference between the two.
So mostly here in the United States, because we have people that listen all over the world to our podcast. So here in the United States, we have allopathic, right? Medicine. So it's the emergency medicine. But here we have a different state of mind. We kind of are a sick community.
Well, that's because our doctors practice medicine.
They
and
practice
just
on
practice
us.
getting better on us.
Even naturopaths practice. We all practice.
Everybody practices.
Actually, the human body is amazing. It has the capability of healing itself. It's a matter of tuning in to those healing properties. And with Western medicine or allopathic medicine, it's more into covering up the symptom or covering up the cause. For instance, if you go to the doctor and you're complaining of pain, then they give you pain medicine, which usually masks whatever it is that is causing the pain in the first place. Unless it's acute, like an appendicitis, then we take out the appendix. So I think that, there's room for both in the world. But I think that we need to have wisdom, and we need to look at our body first and say, what can my body do to heal itself, and work with that. And I think that we jump the gun a lot, and we go to the big cannons instead of using the little BB gun. And I think that sometimes that causes more sickness, more symptoms, and then we take more pills to create more symptoms because we're trying to cover up the symptoms we already had. And I think that can be very tragic in the end, because I think that we're not healing the body, we're just covering up the problems that maybe we should be addressing.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, makes so much sense.
So when I had COVID, Brenda actually helped me out a ton. She came to our house several times. And
I'm just going to say it.
It was kind of a strange way that we came into acquaintance, right?
Yeah, so basically, I had seen Brenda and her husband outside on my walk and said hello, just the cordial meetings and stuff. But when Brad was super sick, I'm talking 103, 104 temperature for 12 days straight, like we were losing him. And
I was pretty
super,
sure it was like
super
2 days.
scary.
Are you sure it was that
No,
long?
it was 12 days. Thank you. I was scared. And so I went on my walk like I did every day. And I was praying. Like I needed answers. I'm a respiratory therapist. So, I know this stuff, I know how to take care of lungs and things like this, but COVID was a whole new animal and I was afraid. And I had passed Brenda's house and Spirit said, you need to go back and knock on that door. And I was like, holy shit, I don't know her. She's going to think I'm nuts. But I did. I minded, like I always say, I mind Spirit very, very well. Knocked on the door and they immediately took me in and said, yes, yes, yes. We know exactly what to do. I know what you need. And she pulled out all the stops and she even checked in on Brad almost every day, tons of support, tons of friendship. And now she's like one of my very best friends. I just love her so much because she literally saved Brad's life. And I don't even know how I could ever, getting a little misty here, I don't know how I could ever pay her back.
No.
Like how do you thank someone enough for that? But seriously,
we're so grateful.
so
Thank
grateful
you so
for
much,
you.
Brenda.
So first of all, I didn't save Brad. Brad saved himself, and you listened to Spirit, and you just were the vessel that came to me, and I happened to have some information and knowledge that I shared with you guys. One thing I want to make clear is I don't diagnose. I'm not a doctor. I am a nurse, but I do have knowledge, and so I shared that knowledge with you guys, and we went with the more alternative traditional way using vitamins and
Yes.
and minerals in order to help Brad's body do what Brad's body could do, which is to heal itself. And I think that that's the big thing with sound therapy and with frequency medicine and vibrational medicine. It's all about looking at the human body and what its capacity is in order to heal itself. I had the great experience of studying with Dr. John Bewley, and if you're not familiar with him, he is someone to actually get to know. He is actually the inventor of the soundboard for the Steinway piano. And
Wow.
he has like 3 PhDs. I don't know, but
Wow.
he's an amazing person. And what he did was when he was developing the soundboard, he used tuning forks, and he noticed that some of the tuning forks had what he called aftertones, or these tones in between. You have a note and another note, but there's the notes in between. We're back
Yeah.
to the spaces in between thing. And so he started to experiment with them, and they first tried it, I believe it was on race horses, and found that the horses were doing well. And so then he went from that to humans and thought, could these frequencies, these tuning forks, make a difference in helping the body to heal? And so he was looking at the different frequencies, and it's interesting because according to a lot of books that I've read, there's 11 frequencies that you can use for healing. And the lowest one is 40 and the highest one is 963. Well, I had to listen to 963 because it's considered to be, it's called the frequency of the gods or the pure miracle tone. So if you go on YouTube and you just type in any of these frequencies, you can find it. And there's actually a really good website on YouTube. It's called Mind is the Master Videos. And when you go to Mind is the Master Videos, you can type in these different frequencies and hear what they sound like. But each one has a connection to healing. For instance, we hear a lot about 432. And there's some controversy between 432 hertz and 440 hertz. 440 hertz is the tone that they now use for orchestras, and most of the music that we hear today is based on that frequency. Some people, you can talk about conspiracy theorists and all of those things, and to me, that's a compliment. But with 440, it's just a different tone, and with 432, it's actually a more flat tone. So all your frequencies are toned to the key of A, and it's just depending on where you go with that. So with 432, the reason that the controversy is most people claim that 432 hertz is more tuned to nature, to the natural sounds, and also to the singing voice. Actually, it's easier to sing with 432 than it is with 440 because it's a different, it's higher note. So that's interesting. But when you look at it, 432 therapy is usually aimed at the heart chakra, and that's what is is the claim is that it's to the heart chakra, it's the beat of Mother Earth, it's the sounds that you hear in nature. The Native American flute is tuned to 432, unless it's not. Some of them are made today at 440. Now, what I loved about Dr. John Bewley is he said, you can have that argument, you can argue which frequency is the best, or you can just say, God created it all, and so they're all good.
Yes.
And so use the frequency that is going to work for you. And I really like that. I like that philosophy, and I've incorporated that. I have flutes that are tuned to 432. I have flutes that are tuned to 440. When I do my sound therapy and my sound baths, I use 432, just because it's better to use the same throughout the session. And so I love that philosophy. He even played us a tape, and it was the sounds of honking horns and just traffic noises. And he said, if you really go into a meditative state and listen to that, you can hear the beauty in that. And there is healing in that. I thought that was interesting.
No.
Would not have ever thought that.
Me either. And I had a hard time listening to his video. But the more I listened to it, the more I thought, you know what, you can pick out. I mean, it's just like when I do my sound therapy sessions and I use a gong, I always forewarn people, listen to the sound and allow it to flow through you. Because if you have negative energy or stuck energy, or you're in a state of dis-ease, then there's something stuck there. And we need to look at what is the cause of that and how can we get rid of the stuckness. And so even with the gong, I remember the first gong bath I went to, and I thought, I'm not going to make it through another 5 minutes. And so I finally thought, okay, I'm just going to relax. I'm just going to relax and allow this sound to go through me. And I fell asleep through the gong bath.
Oh, wow.
It was great. I really went into a state of relaxation. So, there's sounds that are really high-pitched.
Well, and you've got an amazing studio here.
do.
I mean, as you walk into Brenda's little studio, she's got this table that sits right in the middle with beautiful sound bowls. They're brass, and then she's got beautiful glass bowls that are all different colors. Obviously, it's the chakra colors, right?
Right. Well, there's different kinds of crystal bowls.
She's pulling out some tuning forks
here.
now.
So with the crystal bowls, these are what we call sanded crystal bowls. So they have a more muted tone to them, which is actually very pleasant to the ear. They have some that are the pure crystal, some that come with like silver and gold in them. They're expensive. Some come with the precious gems in them. And they're beautiful, and they're great for meditation, I think, in really small groups or one-on-one. But in large groups, especially when you use mics with them, they can almost be too sharp in the sound, if that makes sense. But again, all sound is good, so we allow it to flow through.
All sound is from God, yes.
So, yes, and then I have some Tibetan bowls that I actually received from a person that was very special that I took care of, that had some medical needs and passed away, and he gifted these bowls to me, and so they mean a lot to me, and they have a lot of great healing energy to them. And then I have my drums. I have a steel drum and then a gong, and I have koshi bells. I have a lot of things that I use, and it just depends on the client, what they're looking for. I look at trying to put the body in a meditative state so that they can, number one, get some rest, and number two, that they can relax enough that they can allow that energy to flow into the body and to help them, assist them with that healing process.
I love that.
So these are tuning forks, and I don't know if you can hear these. Let's see if you can.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So Dr. John Bewley, he, in studying the tuning forks and especially looking at using them on humans, and they had several different universities that worked in conjunction with him, and he's got some books out that are really interesting if you're interested in reading them. One that I really like is called Human Tuning, and it kind of goes through his findings and what he found. But the two that he found, that he said, if you want to buy tuning forks, just buy a C and a G. Now, he recommends the Biosonics tuning forks. I had others, and they were a cheaper brand, and they worked, but I found that the Biosonics have a clearer tone to them, and you can hear a lot of the aftertones with them. So with C and G, if you look at the Vitruvian Man, there's C and G and A and E when you look at the position of his hands.
And you're talking Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man.
Yeah, the Da Vinci Code, the Vitruvian Man. So Dr. Bewley talks about that and covers that in his book. But one of the things he said is that with C and G, it's a perfect fifth. So it's that miracle fifth, or that perfect fifth, where you really get those healing properties because you've got basically from one end to the other, C to G in your notes. And so this is a C, and this is a 256. So there's C's that go from high to the lower tones. This is a mid-tone. This is a higher tone C.
Wow.
You hear the difference?
Yes.
And then this one is G. So just with the C and the G, if you just had those two tuning forks, you can actually tune yourself up. You can actually create a meditative state, a very relaxed state. And so when I do my sound baths, I like to use the tuning forks prior to the sound bath so that I can actually tune the person up, so to speak. But I use different pressure points is what we use that we can put them on. I generally don't ask the person what's wrong with them. I like to use my intuition and just kind of see spirit to spirit what is that their needs are so that we can work with them. And then afterwards we have a conversation and they can tell me you either did a great job or you blew it.
But you know, I love that intuitive healing model. I
Yeah.
think that's so important to be able to listen to spirit and go, okay, this is what I'm hearing.
Right.
And work directly to that, spirit to
Right.
spirit, rather than going, just tell me everything and then I'll figure it out.
I think, you know, in the books that I've read and the classes that I've taken in alternative medicine and the alternative courses that I've taken, most all of them say the same thing, and that is we are born with an innate ability to heal ourselves, an innate ability to connect to spirit. And we lose that along the way because we're taught to lose it, you know, and it's sad because we take the square peg and you try and put it in the round hole or vice versa, the round in a square hole, and we don't fit, but we push enough with that hammer and you might be able to, you know, knock those edges off the square peg and force it into the round hole. And I think that we do that too much with our public education systems and just with society as to what the acceptance is and what is considered to be the social norm, whatever that social norm may be. And we frown on people who fall out of those social norms. You know, my philosophy in life is that if it feels good, and if I feel like it's coming from that high vibration, if it's coming from a space of love and light, and in other words, it's not being forced, it's a path of learning, then I know I'm on the right path. But if it comes from a space of control and of force and of power in order to force me to do that, then I know that that's coming from a very negative entity, and I choose not to play with that. So I always,
Amen.
I always say, you know, it's like you have two dragons. You have this dragon up here. This dragon represents love and light and all those higher frequencies. And then you have this dragon that's breathing fire and is all about control and fear. And it's interesting because I think it was David Hawkins. He's very interesting. If you can read his book, it's called Power versus Force. It's an interesting book to read. But one of the things that he talks about is the frequencies of emotion. And there's actually, it's called the vibrational scale of consciousness. And so what they did was they looked at that and they found that when you get to the space of enlightenment, it's between 700 to 1,000 hertz of energy, whereas shame...
So hang on a minute. What does it take to get to the enlightenment?
Boy,
I'm just going to skip all the steps. Just give me the cheat sheet.
We're all headed. We're all headed there, aren't we?
Oh my gosh, you're so funny.
That's another book. I think first of all, you have to overcome those lower frequencies. And the lowest frequency that they have on this particular model is called shame, and it's at 20. And fear is actually lower than that. So when people look at...
so that's like the bell in Game of Thrones. Shame.
Yes.
Oh, in Game of Thrones.
Shame.
Yeah.
Shame.
Yes.
Exactly. That frequency. It's interesting that you brought that up. So when we look at force, which is what this book that Dr. Hawkins or David Hawkins came up with, Power versus Force, he said with the force frequencies, that would be pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, and shame. So those are all your lower frequencies, and they require force in order to get that type of emotion. Whereas the ones that create power are courage, neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace, and enlightenment. And so as you go from shame to enlightenment, you go through these different emotions, these different frequencies. And I think that, at least for me, I'm an old person now, and
She's not really.
No.
I really am.
She's so beautiful and she's not old.
I am very young at heart. There you go. So I think that as you go through life, you can either constantly question yourself and constantly be in judgment of yourself over little things that you've done, or you can say, you know what, I did the best I could with the knowledge and the energy I had at that moment in time, and this is what I learned from that. And now, because if I look back at my age now and look at the 20-year-old Brenda or the 35-year-old Brenda, I'm going to be very judgmental of her because she did not have the knowledge that I have now. She doesn't have the wisdom that I have now. In some ways, she might have been more wise than I am now. But I'm just saying that when we go into a space of comparison, which, by the way, is a low frequency, then we never win. We can't win with that. And so we have to look at life as a collection of lessons. And when we learn that lesson, then we can raise that vibration to the next frequency. If we don't learn the lesson, then it comes up again and again and again until we learn it. And each time it comes up with a little bit higher, or not higher, but a more powerful frequency to force the issue so that we can learn the lesson. That's kind of how I've gotten to the point where I'm at now, is by looking and saying, okay, did I learn something from this? And when something comes up that's traumatic, like the truck accident we were in May.
Yeah, you guys are lucky to be alive.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
We were coming home for Memorial Day, and the truck tire on the driver's side, back truck tire, blew, and we were hauling our big, beautiful trailer, and we ended up being pushed into the medium and rolled the trailer and the truck 3 times, and I came out with a scratch on my elbow, and there were so many miracles that occurred that day. But
well, and when trailers roll, they turn into a yard sale. Like, they just shred.
I remember looking back thinking, did a bomb go off?
Right?
It wasn't even recognizable, to look at that.
So scary.
But I'm still traumatized by it. But I keep asking myself, okay, there's some lessons there, Brenda, so let's learn them. And number one, the lesson of miracles. I am a nurse, worked in the ER and the ICU, and so I know the value of seatbelts, and my husband, unfortunately, has not always had that value. And he put his seatbelt on just minutes. Actually, it was like 8 miles before the accident happened, and
Wow.
he doesn't know why, other than he saw a policeman and decided maybe I ought to put my seatbelt on, because I'm always lecturing him. But he had put it on, and I didn't even notice that he had it on. And if
Wow.
he hadn't had it on, The other is I had a really strong feeling. Number one, I had a really strong feeling not to go, but we went anyway. But it was all about don't take your dogs. And this is like up to 4 days before. And I'm like, okay, this is a holiday. Who am I going to get to watch my dogs now? And
Nan just raised her hand.
I would have watched them. I love Cooper and Sadie.
Well, my grandson, I
I
texted
think
him.
Nan knows the dogs in the neighborhood better than most of the people in the neighborhood.
Nan and I are good that way. We do. We make friends with the dogs first. I think
so
I did
true.
make friends with your
You
dog
did.
first.
She did. Brenda's like, oh, it's
True,
voodoo.
it's voodoo. Voodoo is what brought us together.
It's so true.
Voodoo. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so 4 days before, I contacted my grandson, and he said, Grandma, I'm not going out of town. I'll come and watch your dogs. So if we had taken the dogs, we would have lost them.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
just a lot of things.
they're such sweet ones too.
Yeah. So, and so you have to look at even traumatic experiences and say, were there lessons? And the other thing is, now I'm more cognizant of when I do get this feeling of don't do that, instead of just disregarding it and doing it anyway, that maybe I should stop and think.
Listen.
Listen to that.
So,
Yeah.
Brenda, you talk about traumas. Can the sound bath therapy help relieve traumas and move traumas through?
I believe it can. I think it depends on the person. Number one, their willingness to let it go. And number two, their willingness to trust their body in the healing process. I think that we're all traumatized.
Right.
Birth is a trauma. What am I doing here? But there is a frequency that they recommend, and that is 369 and 417 hertz, because both of those frequencies help you in releasing the negative energy. And like I said, it really is an individual thing. I'm not a doctor. I feel like I'm a healer in the fact that I have enough knowledge to assist myself and others if they want to, experiment and find some things that may or may not help them. So I think a lot of it depends on the individual. There's a scripture that came up not too long ago. Basically, what it is it's when the woman touches the robe of Jesus and she's healed, and she says to Jesus, "You've healed me," and he basically comes back and says, "I did not heal you, and neither did my garments heal you. What healed you was your faith.
Your faith made you whole."
Yeah. And so I think that's the thing that we as medical people forget, is that faith. I know that I've had patients that we pretty much written off and said, you're on your own. And they either go on to heal or they don't. And I think it depends on how much they believe what we just told them. That's sometimes why I'm not a fan of giving a prognosis, because I think that sometimes that takes away that free will and free agency of that person to determine whether or not it really is their time to leave. I also think
that's interesting.
Yeah, I think that, because I remember once we had a young man come onto the floor, and he, by all intents and purposes, looked extremely healthy, and he was in his early 20s, and he was just basically passing through. Well, come to find out, he was in later stages of leukemia and wasn't even aware of that. And,
wow.
The doctors basically said, you have, weeks, and not months, not years, but you have weeks to live. And I remember going into his room. I was working a night shift and went in, and he was praying. And, I didn't want to disturb him. I back out because he was kneeling at the bed and praying. And it was interesting because he ended up leaving us to go back home. I believe he lived in Vegas or someplace, I can't remember. But I remember 2 years later, he came back to our floor to let us know that he was still alive. So I think
that's amazing.
Faith has a lot to do with it. If you believe that it's not your time and that your body has the capability of healing, I think that there is some energy in that can assist. I've also seen where people said, absolutely, I'm going to live. They've tried everything and they die anyway. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of mysteries in life, and we get to figure it out as we go, but we get to trust our bodies and trust ourselves and trust the Creator that he's the real deal. He knows what he's doing, he or she.
Yeah, right? Wow. So, Brenda, I've got a question for you. You have some traditional training with herbal remedies, right? Didn't you take a pretty cool trip to go and train under a shaman?
I did.
Thank you for joining us on the Mormon Medium Podcast. Don't forget to tune in again next week as we continue our conversation with Brenda. If anyone out there wants to book with Brenda, we'll put her information in the show notes, as well as Nan's. If you would like to book a reading or a balance with Nanette, you can do so by clicking the link in the show notes.